Welcome in. Time for a little Talkin' Ball on Monday night, live edition. Jerry and I are going to make this a regular occurrence on 7 o'clock on Mondays. Other people will be stopping by with us from time to time, but happy to move this to a live show. Jerry Hamilton, you listened to Steve Sarkisian's presser earlier today. I did as well. CJ Vogel was there for us. Here's the first opening statement, I guess, from Steve Sarkisian.
Scrimmage, I was pleased in the fact that I really felt like we made strides from one week to the next. And a lot of times that's hard to quantify because you're trying to look at all three phases of your team. You're looking at depth. You're not just always looking at frontline starters, but it just felt faster. It felt like we were more efficient. It felt like we were moving at a better pace offensively. Not that it was all just go fast, but even just getting lined up, shifts in motions. I think that forced more communication from our defense, which we needed. We were trying to emphasize there. I thought on special teams we were playing faster. We're starting to realize kind of who are going to be some of our key components on special teams as well. And so that was real positive. And so coming out of that, as we head into this week, we kind of have what we call a mock game on Saturday, where we kind of work all of our substitutions and situations that might come up Saturday. So we treat this week like a game week. And although we haven't started school, all of our timing and practices and meeting times will be exactly as if we were in class, so that we can start creating some of those habits on their daily routine and what they need to do to handle their preparation from a football standpoint, but still managing their personal lives. So we're working on that. And then more importantly than that, as I just touched on with the team, we really got to drill down on the little things this week, right? Everybody's got the little things, the details at their position to really wire into, and at that point, when they do that's how they earn the trust of us, that we can count on them to do the big things when the games come around. So I've been impressed with this team. I love, like I said, just the camaraderie of this group. They're very connected. They work well together. They hold each other accountable, and that was no different Saturday. And so the one thing I'll touch on too, I thought the offense took care of the ball much better Saturday. Coming out of that first scrimmage, the ball was loose. I think we had about 5 turnovers. This past Saturday we had 1, and it was another great red zone turnover that the defense now 2 weeks in a row has been able to create. So that's good for them too. So again, I'm trying to look at it from a 10,000-foot view and not through a straw, just as what does the offense do, but as a team. And I've been impressed with where we're at.
Good stuff there from the Longhorn leader, Jerry. You listen to him, and you get the sense that he's now in full-on Colorado State mode. It's time to get ready for the season. I think he's probably figured out who's going to start, who his two deep is, and let's get this all out of the way, figure out how we're going to act in practice week to week. This week they started with early morning practices only through the end of the week. That was a big change as well. What was your takeaway from what Sark had to say there?
Yeah, I mean, look, we're not going to see we're not expecting to see a depth chart for a while, but there is a depth chart, even when it has a bunch of oars next to it, right? But getting ready, getting into game prep for Colorado State, treating this like a game week. After 2 scrimmages is kind of where we expected them to be. Decisions have been made, even if they're not necessarily been made publicly yet. Decisions have been made. And I really, look, I've said all along, I think this is a great team for Steve Sarkisian and the staff to coach. They got so close to last season, even Isaiah Bond and Niblett at Bama. But, all those guys left with a bit of a sour taste in their mouth. If those teams continue to be locked in and the locker room stays strong, those teams are really good teams to coach for a coaching staff. Because you don't have to really worry about the motivation of those teams. If you do, you have an issue. But one of the things that Sark mentioned too was, and this is where Quinn being a third-year starting quarterback for Texas in this season is big. He called a players-only meeting late last week, about 15, 20 minutes before practice, and just had a discussion where they're at, talking about the injuries, boom, making sure everybody's on the same page. And I think that's a good leadership sign from Quinn that he did that. A lot of times people just say that the players only meeting only happens when there's distress or there's a lot of adversity during a season after a loss, a couple of losses, a loss of a rivalry game, and you need these guys to get back focused and if there's any finger pointing. But we're not at that point in a season, so we're preseason. So that was really good that Quinn did that in my eyes. I think that's taking him on a leadership role that Texas fans want to hear that he's taken on.
We know about the players-only meeting after a loss against Kansas all too well. To
Yes.
your point. Remember those days, Jerry? I do, and it's not too long ago. So we need to nip those kind of things in the bud instead of worrying about it. All right, we're going to say thank you to our sponsor, but before we do that, we're also going to talk a little bit more. But before we do any of this, I want to say thank you to Colton Martinez. Look at this, Jerry and gang. And Colton says, enjoying my last hours of summer. He's clearly a student. Tomorrow it's back to work at the Bubble with my trombone to get started on Longhorn Band's 125th overall season and first in the SEC. Colton, good luck to you, bud. Thanks for checking in.
How cool is that, Bobby?
I know.
We talk about the football players and the team and the fans, but think about Colton and the Texas band. They moved to the SEC too. I mean,
this is cheerleaders and all those
everybody involved, because I think we tend to kind of pigeonhole it to the athletes and the fan base, but everything else that goes into it. And CJ said today when he was leaving the Sark press conference that you start to see Longhorn city limits. Everything's starting to kind of being built up right now. Everything's getting prepared around the DKR for the first game of the season. So it's here. Preparation mode is here. And that is really cool for Colton. And congrats to you, man. I think you're going to have a blast. Hey, and by the way, the only challenge you'll have, Colton, is at Vanderbilt this year. Y'all are going to be hearing yourselves.
They will. There won't. The echo will be the eyes of Texas. I want to say thank you to our sponsor, each and every Talkin' Ball on Monday Night Live Stream, brought to you by our friend John Donovan, president of Longhorn Wealth Management. John's a proud Texas Ex's Life member whose wife and 6 siblings are all UT grads as well. John's a certified financial planner who has spent more than 30 years providing investment, retirement, insurance, and estate planning services and solutions to Longhorn families and friends across the nation. As a reminder, August is National Make a Will Month. So just as the Longhorns are prepping for their home opener in 2 weeks, prepare your financial affairs. Make sure your estate will stay intact for your loved ones. Please reach out to John for a free 90-minute consultation to explore how Longhorn Wealth can analyze your estate planning needs. Simply call John and his team, 972-707-4900, or go online, longhornwealth.net, to schedule your free consultation. He says hook 'em. Hey, Jerry, another thing that go ahead. Trumpet player here. Band Nerds Unite.
Love it.
From Alan McAda. Nice to see you, Alan. Hey, another question for you, Jerry, based on what Steve Sarkisian said. Talked a little bit about Ryan Niblett and him coming on. They pushed him into a scenario where he got some time as a running back this year, but Sark says he's coming on as a wide receiver right now, and he thinks he may actually have 7 wide receivers ready as opposed to just 6.
Yeah, so I think what's interesting about Ryan Niblett is also special teams. I think Sark mentioned special teams as well. Ryan Niblett was a jack of all trades in high school. He literally played receiver, running back, quarterback. He was the punter and return punts. Luckily, you don't have to do that at the same time, else he'd have to make a choice. He covered kicks when he was a young player, returned kickoffs. This is a guy who's done a little bit of everything. So finding a role and being really good at a role is not going to be something he's not accustomed to, because for Eisenhower to win football games in high school, he had to do it all. I'd say play till you cramp. That's what Quandre Diggs did at Angleton. That's what some of these guys have to do. Obviously, Angleton a better team than Eisenhower, but they have to play everywhere. They have to play until they cramp. That's the only time they come out of the game. And so Ryan Niblett, I mean, I think he played some spot safety at times for them as well. So him playing a role, here's the thing that I really look at with Ryan Niblett. Bobby, it would have been really easy for him to transfer last spring. Worthy, Whittington, and A.D. Mitchell they all depart, and Sark brings in 3 transfers that have years of playing experience. You bring in a 5-star receiver in Wingo, right? You bring in a 4-man wide receiver class out of high school. Ryan Niblett wasn't getting a lot of reps, necessarily meaningful reps. The easiest thing for these guys to do now is to hit the door and go somewhere else. But he stayed. And by the way, Texas wanted him to stay, which tells us something, right? But he's a guy that runs 10.5. And he was a raw football player coming out of Eisenhower High School because he played everywhere. He didn't have time to concentrate on one singular position and try to maximize his talent. That's not what Eisenhower could do for him to win games. He had to do it all. That wasn't where that program was at the time. They didn't have the numbers, and they played in the tough district. So I think it's not surprising to me if he becomes a really good special teams and role type of player, because he almost did it in high school to win games.
Well, I mean, look, any way you can be helpful to the team is helping the team win.
Impact winning.
That's exactly. Impact winning is the way Sark likes to describe it. And I think that's a good way to put it. Jerry, I also want to say we just talked about it a few minutes ago, some of those photos that CJ took for the website. Let me see if Matt, do you have those ready for us yet or no? He said 1 minute. We'll come back to that in a little bit, but CJ actually took some photos of the new scoreboard from the backside, Jerry, as well as the LBJ lawn that they're getting ready for home games as well today. We'll make sure everybody gets a chance to see that. Here's the back of the scoreboard, the new Jumbotron that's going in, guys. You can barely make out where if you zoom in a little bit, Matt, I'm talking to Matt, our producer here. If you can zoom in at all, you can actually see the outline of where the Longhorn logo is going to be with the LED lights right there.
That's going to be cool.
Yeah, that'll be cool. That's going to be the backside of the scoreboard in the south end zone. And then also, Matt, we had the LBJ lawn pick, but we can get to that a little bit later. You got it now? I want to show people this as well. This is the lawn over by LBJ. So again, this is the north side of the stadium, northeast side of the stadium. So hopefully we all have some good times over there tailgating. That's
where college game day will be when they're in town. That's that area.
Yes, absolutely. All right.
Grass looks really good. Good job.
Yeah, the grass does look green for mid-August in Austin. Hey, another thing that happened today, and we want to pass along our congratulations before we start taking questions and comments from everybody on the chat line. Maalik Murphy. I want to give him a round of applause a little bit here. Young man that stood in for Quinn Ewers a couple different games last year, led Texas to wins against not only Houston, but also BYU and Kansas State. Played really well at times against Kansas State. Pete Thamel has said that he will be the new quarterback at Duke. He won the starting job there for Manny Diaz, the new head coach for the Blue Devils. So congratulations to Maalik Murphy. According to Pete Thamel sources, transfer Maalik Murphy lands starting QB job at Duke. He'll start the opening game of the Manny Diaz era against Elon. He came from Texas, where he won both his starts last year. Hey, both his starts were big, particularly Kansas State. But what he did in Houston to come off the bench dry, Jerry, because Texas was on a one-game losing streak at that point. If they would have lost to Houston, that would have been 2 in a row, and that season would have gone south in a heartbeat. So happy for him as well right now.
He gets a good warm-up game against Elon. Then they're at Northwestern in Friday, September 6th, night before Texas takes on Michigan. That'll be an FS1 game at 9 p.m. Eastern there. So he gets his warm-up against Elon. Then you travel to Northwestern. You're playing on the lake up there. Then UConn at Middle Tennessee. Then Old Mac Brown, September 28th, and at Georgia Tech. And then the last half of that schedule is a good one for Duke, Florida State, SMU at Miami, at NC State, who's going to be very good. Virginia Tech at Wake Forest. So good luck to Maalik this year. Hopefully, I don't know what Duke's got back on the offensive line. I think that's going to be big for Maalik this year and Manny Diaz in year one. I haven't studied up their OL, but I hope the OL protects well for him. Gives him an opportunity to throw it down the field.
All right, let's go to the chat line. Let's start taking your questions, comments. We're going to be here for the better part of the rest of the hour. Jerry, let's start with Rick Ammerguy. Jonah Williams to Texas would change the outlook of this class. He might be the biggest recruit since Arch. Anthony Hill,
Colin Simmons,
Arch, right?
Colin Simmons.
Yeah, there's some big ones in there. That being said, Jonah Williams is a terrific prospect. He announces at 6:30 on Saturday night in Galveston. The Longhorns are hopeful here, and it's coming down to the last minute or last week before he makes a decision. LSU, as well as A&M, Oregon, all in pursuit right now.
Oregon will be too far from home. I actually just posted on OnTexasFootball.com an update on Michael Terry and Jonah Williams. Oregon will be too far from home. We kind of talked about that. I mean, look, if you're going to play college football and baseball, that's a lot of travel for a family that has another son in playing college baseball, by the way. So that's a lot of travel. And again, my biggest question is nobody from the Williams family has left the state of Texas for college.
Yeah, I just think he's a tremendous prospect. We'll have more on him later. I don't know if he's the biggest recruit since Arch, but he's definitely a 5-star caliber prospect.
I guarantee you who would agree with Rick is Casey Hampton. So.
Casey, a ball high product himself, by the way, for those that were unaware. I would say this: Rod Babers does not go gaga over many defensive back prospects. Rod Babers likes him some Jonah Williams. I'll just put it that way. We'll keep going here. Some other news and notes. Hey,
I need to hit another question, Bobby. I need to hit another question on this because Woodcrest actually has a good one. Any truth to Jonah Williams only playing baseball? Rumor from a few Sooner fans stirring up the pot. They need to worry about is Michael Hawkins going to be their quarterback by the end of the year? No, that's not true. Jonah Williams, one of his big things for pulling out of the MLB draft was he wants to play college football. Man, that was it. Graduate early in December from Galveston Ball so he can go play college football. He kind of, tying into a former Sooner, sorry, Aggies, on this one. He similar to Kyler Murray. Kyler Murray, despite being obviously Kyler's the only player to ever be drafted in the top 10 in 2 sports, but even when the A's drafted him, Kyler liked football a little bit more. And that decision by Jonah Williams to graduate early from high school was the first sign that he liked football more than baseball. You don't make that decision if you're only thinking baseball because you're going to see what happens in the draft. You're not going to make that decision and just play college baseball. That's not what Jonah Williams plans to play college football and baseball, and he's planning to do both in the spring. And once he enrolls and becomes a scholarship athlete, he is out of the MLB draft for 3 years or until he's 21.
If he enrolls, he's not going baseball, at least not solely baseball. That's for sure. Hey, from Kelly Horns Up, Lady Longhorn Volleyball,
yes.
Guys, ranked number 1 in the preseason poll. Congrats to the team. I think that they and Nebraska were the only 2 teams to get first place votes. I tell you what, Longhorns got a middle blocker transfer from the University of Kentucky that was an all Southeastern Conference player named Reagan Rutherford. I don't know if they'll be better than they were a year ago or the year before that, but they have a chance for a three-peat based on those early season polls. Jared Elliott doing great work with that volleyball team.
I'll say this. If we're talking about the best, maybe most underrated athlete on the Texas campus in terms of the way fans look at it, Skinner probably gets my vote.
Yeah, Maddie Skinner.
A hellacious talent.
Great volleyball player. His sister was on the USA volleyball team.
Not to get too deep into the weeds and volleyball talk, but I would love to. What she did from the 10-foot line in the Final Four national championship game was elite stuff.
Gotcha. Yeah,
most people don't play from the 10-foot line the way she did.
All right, we're talking ball on the Monday night live stream here with Jerry Hamilton. I'm Bobby Burton, sponsored by our friend John Donovan over at Longhorn Wealth Management Group. Jerry, Manuel Soto, and you and I have been following this and tracking this, heard from another outlet that there won't be any shuffling along the O-line during the season, as in no rotation, except unless maybe a goal line package. Is that true? Based on what I've been told, it is untrue, but I'll let Jerry speak to it too.
Yeah, same for me. Look, we'll see what happens, but I expect Texas to have a little more rotation this year. And here's the thing to remember. And when somebody says, oh, there's not going to be any rotation, well, what did Cole Hudson and DJ Campbell do 2 years ago before Hudson got hurt? So it's not like there's not a precedent for this set by Flood already. Now, if somebody's saying at tackle, yeah. If somebody's saying at center, if Jake Majors is healthy, yeah. At the guard spots, we'll see. Flood's rotated guys in the past.
I agree with that. I think there's going to definitely be more. I will say this. Some of those players were lured back with the idea that there would be more playing time for them available this year too. So you'll have to wait and see how that all goes. This one from Michael Gresser. Good conversation in my opinion. Who starts at safety versus Michigan? Look, I think there are three candidates, right, in Michael Taft, Andrew Makuba, and Derek Williams. Question I might have, Jerry, could Texas go to a three-safety look at times against a Michigan team? Maybe give their new quarterback a little something to think about and also be able to support the run a little bit more. I don't know. Something to think about.
I think here's the biggest thing with Derek Williams I've heard. And obviously, I'm as high on him, Bobby, I think you are too, as Sark and Michael Griffin, all the people say, oh, this guy could be a first-round pick one day. I think he's got to start making more plays on the ball in year 2 and year 3 to get there. But he was a freshman last year that didn't have spring practice. The biggest thing for me with Derek is where's his voice at? Like, he was one of the 3 guys that wore the headset on one of the first practices we were at. Where's his voice at? Because that is going to be big. Makuba has been a 3-year guy at Clemson and has been a communicator for them. Michael Taft, a strong communicator. Maybe his strength is that communication at the safety spot in a way, and then just the want to he has. Where's Derek Williams at in terms of that communication? Because a couple of the older players may have be a little ahead of him there. And so while we talk about all the talent he has, where is he going to be at with that communication part of it in his second year? I think if that comes through for him, I think he could end up being the best safety of this group. And that's saying something because Makuba is really, really good and Taft's been productive.
I agree with all of that. Hey, this is one coming in that I think is a good one. Nathan asked me, Bobby, is Coach Irwin's segment returning next week? Yes, Lunch with the Coach returns next week. It will be weekly during the season with Coach Brian Irwin. We may have a surprise in store for you as well as part of that. So I'm excited about that. But Coach Irwin, we talked about, he and I talked last week, I think, about some stuff, and he's happily coming back. I always enjoy my time with him. I hope you guys enjoy that as well. He's somebody that I go way, way back with to when I was a student, like Colton Martinez. Colton Martinez says, thanks for everything y'all do and for the shout out, being Bobby and Jerry. Besides our game, which week 1 or 0 games are you most excited to watch? Clemson, UGA for me. There's a little Tilton College Station that might be interesting too. With Notre Dame.
Yeah, it is Georgia and Clemson for me. I'll let you get into Notre Dame and A&M, Bobby. Here's the reason. Because while I kind of joke about Dabo and his him being anti-portal and him watching FSU zip past him with the portal, they still have defensive front talent. They still have a talented front seven. And I want to see this Georgia offensive line against them, because I was told by somebody I trust 1,000% that this is going to be the best offensive line Kirby Smart's had at Georgia. Now, Kirby came out late last week and was all complaining about his team and everything, which is what you do when you know you're really good and you need to motivate him. John Calipari was famous for that at Kentucky basketball, some of his best teams. So Kirby is sick of those guys this team hearing how good they are, and dadgummit, he's got to stop it. They suck. Got to get better, right? That's what coaches do. I want to see this offensive line against Clemson. If they roll out and physically whip those guys, because Clemson has multiple NFL players in their front seven, then that's going to be a pretty good sign for Georgia this season, in my estimation. That's one thing that's why I want to see that game and see if that offensive line looks like the best in the country right out of the gate. Because I was told they have 7 players on their OL that'll play 6, 8, 10 years in the NFL. That's a hefty number, Bobby.
Yeah, it is. They're going to be loaded. I think Georgia's the odds-on favorite to win the national championship, and there's good reason for that. The game that I'm most looking forward to is A&M Notre Dame. First of all, I think the first team to 14 points wins. These are 2 defensive-oriented teams with defensive-oriented coaches. The one thing that I would add is that Notre Dame does have Riley Leonard as its newest quarterback. There's a reason Maalik Murphy just won the starting job at Duke, and that's because Riley Leonard, who is, by the way, was coached by Mike Elko, is now the starting quarterback at Notre Dame rather than Duke. And we'll see what A&M comes out and does under Colin Klein, their new offensive coordinator. That's a whole new system. Not a lot of similarities between what Colin Klein and Jimbo Fisher did. We'll see if the Aggie O-line can keep Connor Wegman upright. That's going to be big. I think we'll see what the A&M run game can do without Reuben Owens.
And I want to say this. And I want to say this: is Wegman really the guy there? I think that's going to be interesting to see where that goes. I think beginning the season, but I'm interested to see where that quarterback position goes at A&M this year.
Okay.
By the way, I want to say this: Notre Dame. I expect them, as long as Leonard's healthy, to have their best offensive firepower they've had in a few years. The transfer receiver from FIU is a really good player. Jaden Greathouse. They have some other guys returning. They did lose their left tackle to start, who their would-be starting left tackle, replacing Joe Alt to ACL early in camp. So they got to do some work there. But Notre Dame will be solid on the offensive line, just like Michigan will be when Texas rolls to Ann Arbor. They're going to be solid at worst, really good at best. So, but I'm interested to see Notre Dame. Notre Dame has the easiest schedule in America to get their college football playoff. If they beat A&M, just go look at their schedule and say, who for sure are they going to lose to? It's going to be hard to find a team they would for sure lose to.
Hey, Colton, one last thing for you, buddy, since you're in the Longhorn band. Burnt Orange Horn, I think, says it best. More band, less canned music. I think you speak for all of us in that regard. All right. Hey, Aloha Traveler with a super chat. Thank you very much. Aloha. To win a championship, in my opinion, we need more top-end talent to compete with Ohio State, Georgia, especially in the portal next year. Will Texas take the next step in NIL needed to land more top talent? Guys, Texas is spending more on NIL than just about anybody out there, including Georgia. So the idea that Texas isn't competing in NIL is inaccurate. So I don't know. That doesn't mean how they choose to spend it is different than other people. Texas may be spending more on retention than actual acquisition at times, right? You want Anthony Hill to stay on the team, right? You want Quinn Ewers, et cetera. So I think people mistake that as one thing over another. What's the value? I mean, I heard, for example, Tennessee gave like $1 million plus to this offensive tackle, a top 10 player in the country. He may not play for 2 years. That's dead money for 2 years, maybe, for you. You know, why? What's the value there? So I get it, but don't be fooled by people saying Texas isn't doing well in NIL. Texas is doing very well in NIL. They can always use more, but it's a top 2 or 3 program in NIL overall, period. And you have a lot of people to thank for that. Now, we all do.
Hey, and by the way, the flip side of that, Bobby, and David Sanders, the offensive tackle from the private school in Charlotte there, where Will Greer's dad's the head coach, by the way. The other thing with that is if you put that type of NIL on the table for an offensive tackle, there's going to be the expectation is not he's going to sit for 2 years. That's the flip side, is you force him to play somebody maybe before you ideally want to, even as talented as he is. Well, that's the flip side to it as well.
Yeah, we'll see how it all works out. I have no problem with how Texas is handling talent acquisitions right now. UT boy says Notre Dame is going to beat A&M and take the under. I would definitely take the under if it's under 35. That's where I'm at on that game, man.
Yeah,
I don't know how they're going to score, etc. I guess is the best way to put it. John Bell has a question for us here. Do you think that in-helmet communications can help with some of Sark's slower developing RPOs? I'm not so sure about that. They're still going to be more slowly developing. The thing that I thought was interesting that Sark talked about when I asked him a question about it, guys, is that he said he felt like the helmet communication would help him remind Quinn and Quinn alone of what he needed to do. And then also that he could tell Quinn to tell someone else, make sure you turn around exactly at 7 yards. Make sure you take that guy out of the play. And so I don't think it's going to help with the RPO game, longer developing RPO game. I do think it's going to help with some nuances. The same can be said with the defensive play caller. I think they're going to be able to know a little bit more about what the situation looks like from a pass defense standpoint. It's just my opinion.
2 things for me, and I'm kind of a broken record on this. I think it's going to be massive for teams on the road in hostile environments. For the play caller and quarterback, and especially the play caller talking to quarterback, because, look, it gets – remember, we had Dr. Brett Robin on here, and he said he was standing next to Chris Sims at A&M 2 feet away from him and couldn't hear him one year. So it's going to help settle down quarterbacks on the road in crazy environments. I really do believe that. The other thing that I've kind of thought more about this outside of what we talk about, Sark's the head coach and the play caller, and now he's got the headset communication as well with his quarterback. So who is going to be right there? He can't do it all. Lincoln Riley can't do it all. None of these guys, Lane Kiffin, they're going to have somebody next to them to nudge them on some in-game stuff, situations at times, Bobby. That's one product, because the head coach, who's also the play caller, has more on his plate than he has in past years, because he's going to be communicating with his quarterback during these drives. So he may not be sitting there thinking about, all right, how many timeouts do I have in this situation? Do we want to punt the ball here? He's going to need, I think, these guys in this situation that are head coaches and play callers, going to need a little somebody standing next to them, probably with their own sheets that they go over, and make sure everybody's on the same page. Because it's more, Bobby, it's more on these guys' plate now than ever.
I'm in total agreement. It's part of what it is. I have some other questions and comments coming here, guys. Mac Nielsen, Bobby, y'all planning anything for the Vandy game? Never been to Nashville. You know it. We'll have a tailgate, guys. Hopefully have some good old Judge Bean's barbecue, too, along with that. And Jerry, you know all about Judge Bean's barbecue. I used to own a restaurant in Nashville that served Texas barbecue called Judge Bean's Barbecue. It's still around. I sold it about 1.5 years ago when I started really trying to do as much as I could here with On Texas Football, and been doing it ever since. All right. Hey, some other questions coming in as well. WTP Sports Dudes, any formations you think Texas will run often. Sark will. So we think because of the loss of Cedric Baxter, Texas will not run the pony package as much as we had hoped, essentially, going into the season. Because Baxter was a big piece of that, both in pass protection, lead blocking, etc., and as a true decoy. Juan Davis wouldn't be a decoy in that regard. All right. And so we think they're going to see less of that. I don't think, and Jerry, even though we talk about these 3 or 4 wide receivers, etc., I don't think Sark's going to go away from the 12 look. 12 personnel.
I think we're going to see more 12 versus more 21.
Yes, I do too. Because I think he likes Gunnar Helm. He's a senior that knows what it takes. He likes Amari Niblett as a receiving threat and a physical mismatch on most outside people. That might help the outside running game, by the way. If you start including Jaden Blue and what he can do on the outside, I think more 12 personnel.
And I'll say this, how much 12 personnel we see early in the season is where Niblett's at with the scheme and the assignments and the route recognition and everything Sark's going to ask him to do. If we don't see a lot of it early, that probably means Niblett is not as far advanced as Sark needs him to be. Then we'll definitely see more of it as the season moves along. I think it could be a timing thing with where Niblett's at.
This is so funny. I sometimes y'all make me laugh in the comments. Brian Upchurch, this is one that just makes me laugh. For me, the dream scenario is to beat Aggie on their field when both team has a playoff on the line. Certainly would be a great scenario if Texas won that game. But Bobby Petronic says no. Not me. I hope to give A&M their 12th loss of the season. He wants them to go 0-12. Oh, goodness. All right. Good stuff, guys. Hey, a couple other thoughts here. Let's talk about this for a second, Jerry, if you don't mind. Terry Freeman reminds us, Texas legend Colt McCoy. By the way, it is 12 days until Texas takes the field against Colorado State, appropriately so, with Colt's number. He announces his retirement and joins NBC Sports as a college football commentator. What do you think about that, Jerry? You think that's going to be good for Colt? I mean, I'm happy for him. He's so well-spoken, articulate, comports himself with class. Your thoughts on Colt McCoy going to the broadcast booth?
Yeah, I think he'll be tremendous at it. I mean, he's got a great mind. I think he articulates it very well. He communicates it very well. I'll just say this. This is his warm-up for the move to ESPN and SEC network in my mind. That accent's got to move south, man. It's got to be in the SEC. It's got to be on the SEC network. He's got to be doing Texas games at some point. So congrats to Colt. I think he'll kick butt at it. And this is kind of a good place to start, but this is not where he'll end, in my opinion.
Yeah. Congrats to Colt, though, in all seriousness. Hey, we want to say thank you one more time to our sponsor. Thank you to John Donovan, President, Longhorn Wealth Management Group. As a proud UT alum, John served for 15 years as a Dallas, Texas Exes board member, and he is now helping lead the build-out of the Collin County Texas Exes chapter. John's a certified financial planner with more than 30 years of experience and expertise in helping Longhorn families maximize their wealth, minimize their taxes, and secure their legacy. To discuss strategies for how you can truly secure your financial future, schedule your own free 90-minute consultation with John by simply calling Longhorn Wealth 972-707-4900 or going online longhornwealth.net. John Donovan says hook 'em to folks out there.
This made me laugh.
What accent? Yeah.
He's got that Texas twang. Got to be in the SEC.
He's from Tuscola, Texas. He's got a twang now. He can work to get it out of him the rest of his life. But we all of us who grow up in Texas end up having a little bit of twang, no matter where we move.
It took my sister over 20 years after she graduated from Texas and moved up to New York City for work and has been in New York, Princeton, London ever since. It took her about 20 years to sound more with a Northeastern, a little tint to the accent. It took 2 decades.
Hey, I don't mind it. I like it. I think that I was mentioning John Donovan is building out that Collin County, Texas X's. I'm going to be in Dallas on Thursday, Jerry, with the Dallas Texas X's, talking to them. They're having a happy hour at a place called The Happiest Hour. It's a scholarship fundraiser, and that's why I'm speaking. I think Alex Okafor is going to be up there as well. We'll see how all that goes, but we're excited for it. Please come out, visit. Any and all funds raised that night, if you're up in the DFW area, will go towards scholarships for UT students from the Dallas area. Very happy to be part of that with the guys at the Dallas Texas X's, guys and gals at the Dallas Texas X's. Jerry, another one from Rick that I wanted to bring back up. If DJ Campbell struggles in pass pro against Michigan, how long a leash does Cole Hudson have?
Yeah, look, that Michigan's going to test DJ and Cam. By the way, I want to say this. Spoke with somebody this morning, mid-morning, said Cam Williams has had a tremendous fall camp. And there is a thought he could end up being a one-and-done player as a starter at Texas. If that happens, I would say what I always say. If that happens, Texas had a heck of a season and probably played in a playoff game if he plays to a first or second round level. On DJ Campbell, I think Cam Williams had a better fall camp than DJ has, from what I hear. I think pass pro DJ is a big part of his year 2 jump. If there's any struggles there, he's really good in the run game, powerful, quick, second level guy. He can impact the run game. If he struggles at all in pass pro, I do think you'll see some substitutions there, especially against Michigan, who's going to bring it. Wink Martindale, Bobby, they're going to bring it at the right side early. It doesn't mean Sark will leave those guys on an island, but they're going to test that right side. They're going to see how well DJ Campbell and Cam Williams are working in tandem. That's a guarantee going into that game.
Gotcha. Jackson Miles, real quick, asked, does the mic cut off in the helmet at any point? Yes, 15 seconds to go on the play clock on both sides of the ball. So not just offense, but also defense. David Keith Williams, this one's for you, Jerry.
Yes.
Do you think Isaiah Bond will be targeted on deep crossing patterns like Xavier Worthy was as a freshman? It seems Sark stopped throwing those routes after Worthy's freshman season. This kind of goes back to formation. And Rod was talking about this the other day. Sark likes what they call short splits of his wide receivers. So they're all packed in together. And when they are doing so, then you can run that crosser to the opposite sideline and get really open because you've effectively stuck behind the boundary corner on that side. I think that he's going to do that with a lot of people. I mean, he did it with JT Sanders at times last year, right? Trying to run those crossers. I don't know why. I do agree with David Keith's opinion, Jerry, that it seemed like X didn't do as much of that his sophomore or even his junior year. He probably became more of just a true downfield threat at some level with comebacks. What do you think?
I do think we'll see it more this year return. I almost said Colt McCoy. Quinn's a third-year starting quarterback. He's very comfortable in Sark's scheme. Sark is very comfortable with where Quinn's at in year 3. And I do think Isaiah Bond is a different receiver than Worthy in this. The two, Rod Babers threw this out on the live stream last night. The only player that had more plays at 20 miles an hour last year in college football than Isaiah Bond was Xavier Worthy. And they are different wide receivers. Worthy was so good in the short game after the catch, right? I think Isaiah Bond, sometimes it's hard to see on the screen. I think Sark's going to use him in that way this year to help open up everybody else. I'm not saying how many catches and yards Bond will or won't have, but I do think his 10-3, 10-4 speed, Sark is going to use that in a way to help open up the field for some other guys this year. And that doesn't mean Bond's just going to go out there and run 80 wind sprints and be done for the day. He's going to have production. But I do think Sark's going to bring a little bit of that back. Like what you saw Xavier Worthy, the ball he scored on against in the preseason game the other night. I think you're going to see some things like that with Isaiah Bond. One, if he races by, great place for Quinn to be because those aren't going to be those. Quinn's deep ball is better inside the numbers than it is on the boundary. I think Isaiah Bond, I think those routes that like what KC uses Xavier Worthy on, I think you're going to see some of that with Isaiah Bond this year. And when you have a guy like Silas Bolden who can play underneath it and is also very fast and elusive after the catch, and you have multiple guys like that, I think you're going to see it more and more this year because Isaiah Bond plays into that, and he helps open up the offense vertically for Sark, even if he's not a targeted player.
What did Sark say earlier today about Silas Bolden? Football's important to him.
Yes.
Quote.
He's Sir Jabari Rice. If people like Sir Jabari Rice on a basketball court, that's kind of what I'm calling Silas Bolden on a football field. Whether he starts or not won't matter. He's the Energizer Bunny that doesn't need batteries. Football absolutely matters to him. He's going to will himself to have a pro career, just like Jabari Rice has done. Those guys in their approach and their fearlessness and their competitiveness, they're so similar to me. I knew Jabari Rice a little bit. We had Silas Bolden on this show twice. There's a lot of similarities in those two guys from their approach.
I got to say this. You're killing me with this analogy of the Energizer Bunny with no batteries. The whole idea of the Energizer Bunny, Jerry, is that it's the Energizer batteries, that it's powering the bunny. So
he doesn't need
an Energizer Bunny. You just have a bunny.
He's the Energizer bunny without the need for batteries. He's good on his own.
It beats all. All right, here we go. Bobby Petronic. I thought this was good as well because I agree with this heavily. I mean, everyone is going to struggle in pass pro against Michigan this year. I'll take a draw in that game. Yes. I think everybody is on the same page with that. This one is going to be probably the last question for the night for us. Jason Wasson, who do you think has the most receptions? Who has the most yards? I've got Silas as most receptions with Jonte the most yards. What are you thinking there, Jerry? I mean,
tough call.
I think Bond is going to have the most yards. I actually think Jonte might have the most catches. I've got it a little switched. And I think to your point, Silas Bolden will be the Energizer Bunny with batteries. So I think Jonte has the most catches. I think Bond has the most yards because he's going to be the guy that runs people off too. I mean, look, Xavier Worthy had the most yards last year when they had the talented overall group.
I wonder as Matthew Golden gets comfortable in this scheme where he goes. I think he's on a really good page with Quinn from everything I hear, but he's also got to be up to speed on the offense to where he has the snap counts that ends up being the targets. But if he accelerates his growth in the scheme, watch out for Golden this year.
Jerry, one more before we actually do let people go. I did not get to this. I missed it early. Jose Rodriguez asks, if you were an NFL GM in the future, who would you take? Michael Fasusi or John Turntine? Fasusi announces on Wednesday. Turntine is a 2026 prospect out of
Boy, Turntine looked really good against Euless Trinity in that scrimmage, by the way. Man, what an athlete playing on the offensive line. Look, I think Fasusi frame-wise maybe has the highest upside. I think as a player, I think Turntine might be ahead. Now, Fasusi has only been in the States 5 years. This is his third or fourth year of playing organized football, so he has not grown up football. John Turntine's father was a tremendous player for Gary Patterson at TCU. John Turntine grew up football his whole life. So there is something to there. I do know that John Turntine, whatever that draft status ends up being one day, and I think he's one of those guys who stays healthy, he's 100% going to maximize it. Where is that? Where does that take him? We'll see.
All right.
So the answer is to be determined. I can't make that call 17-year-old guys right now.
we're going to close it out with this just because that humor is good sometimes, Jerry. Jeff Moe says, batteries are for the Manscaped. There we go. Jerry Hamilton.
Hey, by the way, I want to add to that question about the OLs before we go.
Okay.
And somebody's asking about Nick Brooks' upside. I think Nick Brooks could be either an all-world guard or quality tackle prospect, depending on his body, where that goes, that body quickness, reactive quickness, where that goes on the next level. But it always, whenever we get into these discussions, something always comes back to my mind. And I've told this story before, but I'll leave you with this headed into the season on the offensive line. I was at the Summer Creek in a Atascocita game. Kelvin Banks was playing against Cam Dewberry. Banks was committed to Oregon at the time. Mario Cristobal and his offensive line coach were at that game. And we got into a conversation during the game. And Cristobal said, who do you think has the higher upside, Kelvin Banks or Cam Williams? And I've said this before, Bobby, and I think I called you after that game. I said, boy, that's an interesting question. You only ask that question if you think Cam Williams may actually have higher upside than Kelvin Banks. And think about where they were in the rankings. And I'm not saying Cam Williams is going to be better, but you only entertain that question if you think the Cam Williams, who's not ranked as high, is really high upside too. So I always bring that up because now both those guys are going to be playing at Texas together, not Oregon this year. And what we're hearing out of Cam Williams, man, Texas could have two guys that go pretty high in the draft if Cam follows through on the field on Saturdays.
Thanks also to Mac Neeson here for the super chat as well. All right, that's going to do it. Thanks again also to John Donovan, our friend over at Longhorn Wealth Management Group. Give him a call anytime, 972-707-490. Also, thank you to our producer behind the scenes, Matthew Hutchison. He got some of those photos and videos up really quickly for us tonight. We appreciate him as always. And most of all, thanks to all of you for joining us. We literally are 12 days away from Longhorn football being a reality. And while I think about 2 weeks ago, I said it was a quick off season, Jerry, now it's getting to be a long off season because I've been thinking about football even more so over the last month.
The NFL preseason doesn't do it for me. Saturday, FSU and Georgia Tech start the college football season. We get right out of the gate. We see if a team, one of the best teams in the country last year, what they're going to be like with a new quarterback this year in FSU, taking on a guy who won a state championship in the state of Texas, Haynes King at Longview, one of the tougher kids I've covered. So that college football's here, 5 days away, and it starts.
It went from a short off season to the last 2 weeks have been extremely long. I'm ready for football. Y'all have a good night. We'll see you again tomorrow morning. Coffee and Football starts up at around 8:15. Take care now.